Good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year 2021. Today we're going to take a look at occult objects in your house. Give demons legal ground. From user Steven Bancarz. Hope I pronounced that correctly. The description box says, occult objects are tools the satanic kingdom uses to yoke your consciousness and spirit to false spiritual revelation and demonic principalities. It gives forces of darkness legal ground to operate in your life and to oppress you. In this video, we talk about the power of occult objects and go through a list of objects to burn. Things like tarot cards, magic books, esoteric books, books about channeling, and other such thing, without the S, can open up doorways to demons of the occult. Okay, so right there, you're going to have to throw away your own Bible. Being an esoteric book that it is, a book about channeling, prophecy, magic book. Yeah, it's based on astrotheology. Whether you like it or not, it just is. Such things can open up doorways to demons of the occult. I won't argue that the Bible can do such things and that there are such books, but most of us want nothing to do with such things. My problem with the title and description already, before we even get into it, is the blanket statement thrown over all of us that is absolutely incorrect. There's already a point I want to make about it, but I think I'm going to wait till the end of the video, being this is relatively short. This is, I see, 7.5 minutes, so I'll make my point at the end. I'll make that point at the end. Let's get into it.
Have you ever wondered why some books or objects feel inherently Hindu?
I'm tempted to simply be a smartass here and say, well, no, because either something is Hindu or it isn't. And if it is, I already know that it is. So I get that feeling because I already know what it is. That's why I'm listening to the piece of music. That's why I'm reading the book. I bought it because it's Hindu. So I already know. On the other hand, yes, I do get it. I do get your point. I've had a feeling from certain pieces of music that remind me of Hindu music. I have a feeling that's not what you're talking about, though.
Or inherently pagan, or inherently esoteric?
Okay, so you've broadened it a bit. The point remains the same. Yes. Before my spiritual awakening in February 2011, I had that feeling. I just didn't know how to identify it. When I heard music such as that of one of my favorite bands since I was in 6th grade, Susie and the Banshees. When I became aware of what paganism truly is, not what I was always told it was. And I hope people are aware of or are willing to make themselves aware of the distinction between a blanket statement and how you can speak generally or broadly about something without looking to just write everybody off. Like when I point out things I don't like about Christianity and people who claim to speak for it, I'm addressing things that I commonly hear. I'm not talking about all Christians. I'm mostly talking about the Bible, the church in general, most churches, agents of the church, priests, pastors. If we're going to Catholicism, bishops, cardinals, all of that. The whole point of this series, as stated in the intro, sometimes we have to speak generally or broadly about something to make a point. But a blanket statement usually has an insulting quality about it, something condescending, something you want to be taken for granted as absolutely true about an entire group of people. So I want to be clear about that distinction where I'm talking mostly about the religion itself and some of the people. So I got that feeling from certain songs by Susie and the Banshees, and I didn't know what to call it, but there was something that felt calling me out of my current situation. Like I was yearning for music and movies and even things happening around me beyond regularity, beyond the things I was used to. So I wanted to be challenged. And this unusual creativity in their music did that. As it would turn out later, the pagan feel was very intentional. The drumming, the particular drumming style of their drummer, is very thoroughly pagan. So yes, in one respect, I do know what you mean.
The reason is because these objects and books and tools, they are charged with a spiritual frequency that matches the delusion that powers are trying to create in the spiritual realm.
Delusion. I want everybody to pay attention to how we just slipped that word delusion in there. This is a presumption that we're apparently supposed to take for granted. Let's back it up just a little bit.
The reason is because these objects and books and tools, they are charged with a spiritual frequency that matches the delusion that powers are trying to create in the spiritual realm.
That matches the spiritual frequency that matches the delusion. The delusion. What delusion? This sounds like a presumption I'm supposed to just take for granted. How much do you know about spiritual frequencies? Teach us more about that. Because I agree with you that such things exist. But are you trying to tell me that everything on a spiritual frequency, on any kind of a frequency, sound frequency, is directly related to spirit? I assume you're aware of that. This is why good, soulful, spiritual music touches us so emotionally. How is that related to a delusion? So if it makes you feel good, the whole intention behind the reason it was written as a devotional piece of music toward a universal principle, especially when directed to a feminine representation of the entire universe as spirit. That is not a delusion. I would like an explanation about that. In fact, that is going to be directly related to the overall point I'd like to make at the end. We'll get there. Delusion, you are incorrect, and I reject the very notion that it even might be. This is something that comes up often with Christians who want you to think that anything that can even possibly have the word occult tied to it is inherently evil. And sometimes they will walk on eggshells to get there, to saying that, and use careful language. So in a way, you're doing the very thing that you're accusing others of.
And by holding on to these things, we are creating a bridge between these supernatural realities, what the Bible calls heavenly places that are ruled by demonic principalities.
So I thought an interesting term that you used was heavenly realms, heavenly realms ruled by demonic principalities. I think about that. Heavenly realms, more than one, ruled by demonic principalities. So they're not really heaven, are they? What you're talking about. They just have that name. Where are these realms? Because I want nothing to do with them, and I have nothing to do with them. You don't get to assume that because I don't belong to your religion, I am under a delusion, and, oh, poor lost soul, me. If only I knew the devil was tricking me.
And our life, our home, our soul. And so in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the power of occult objects, why it's so important to get them out of your house, out of your life, and we're going to go through a list of things that you should either burn or just throw in the garbage.
This is another problematic term. Our soul. Our soul. When people say our souls, my soul, your soul, when you talk about soul as if it's a possession, as if it's something you carry around with you, well, who are you that's carrying it? Like it's luggage you're walking out of the airport with or something. That in itself is ego speaking for soul, my soul. You don't have soul. I don't have soul. Nobody has soul. We are soul. I think it's important to carry that out in language, to be aware of that. And I acknowledge, too, that many people see that, and it doesn't come out. They're used to saying my soul, because that's the sort of language the Bible uses. So, understood.
And so in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the power of occult objects, why it's so important to get them out of your house, out of your life, and we're going to go through a list of things that you should either burn or just throw in the garbage.
Either burn or throw in the garbage. Okay. Before we even name the things, be aware, you're the one talking about fire and burning, okay? So it's like this devil figure. Had nothing to do with it until you brought it forth. I'm not going to set anything on fire, even the Bible. I don't think any books should be burned. I want Hitler's Mein Kampf to continue to exist hundreds of years from now in whatever form people are reading by then, because I want them to see. I want them to understand history. People right now are actively supporting censorship, literal book burning, literally and symbolic, but right now it's more important about literal. Because in that way they're bringing back things that should have been long gone by now. People are doing it as demonstrations. Keep information, even when it angers you to your very core, like Mein Kampf or anything. Keep those books. That's knowledge. You don't have to take it seriously. Be aware that someone wrote it, and because someone wrote it and other people took it in a certain way, say, I shouldn't have to explain this, should I? I won't explain anymore. I think you already get my point. No book burning. I'm interested in finding out what else you think should be burned, though.
The reason why an object, an idol, a book can feel inherently Hindu.
Inherently Hindu. I'm going to have to get used to this term. Another problematic term / word you just used, idol. Are you assuming that if we have a figurine representing any humanized form of a myth or a constellation or a character in mythology, a god or goddess of any particular religion, that it's automatically considered an idol? What about people that have a figurine or a portrait of Christ? Does that automatically get exempt from idol status?
Is because of the spiritual signature, the spiritual vortex, if you will.
A spiritual signature does not equal a vortex. That's like this whole demons thing. You just kind of slipped that in there and expect us to consider them synonymous. They are not. This is very important, extremely important on the subject you're talking about. There's such a far-reaching understanding. It could be. What vortex are you thinking of? Because like the devil and this demon stuff, again, I had nothing to do with it until you brought it forth and projected it into people's heads. Where are you getting this vortex? What's being sucked into it? Is this a literal black hole somewhere?
That it is tied to in the astral realm and the spiritual realm.
Astral realm or otherwise. Tell me more about this, because it sounds like you have very specific ideas. I cannot take them seriously, but it sounds like something you may know about and you deal with. I don't deal with black holes, and most occultists and pagans do not as well.
And so principalities that have been set over Hinduism, for example, the false gods of Hinduism.
Okay, so again, are we to take for granted that anything to do with Hinduism, gods and goddesses, are false. I would encourage you and anybody watching this to look into the details of the Bible that were lifted from Hinduism, a spiritual tradition that has been around so much longer than Christianity. I went into part of this in my Medusa video, but the Shining Ones of India, Naga, the serpent wisdom, I know hearing all of that together right now, many of you and your viewers are going to think, oh, serpent wisdom, that's the devil. Those are people from the devil. I know you think so. Not you, the video maker. I'm not going to make presumptions about you. I am making presumptions based on what I'm given all the time about many Christians. Again, not all of them. The Shining Ones, the people with the serpent wisdom, they called them Shining Ones because they were the angels. It's not my fault that's true. Naga. You know the god Krishna? That's where we get the term Christ, which was applied to more than one person. Krishna. Krishna. That is exactly where that comes from. A person who has taken on the serpent wisdom. Christ was a shining one, is a shining one. The problem you and I share is the many translations and edits the Bible has gone through, and different languages. Even the fact that it was originally compiled by men. This is not the Word of God. What we're reading today is the word of men who compiled it, men with politically vested interests, who had to make all other religions seem evil. So they drew them all together. There's so much more to say, but my point is made. We'll move on. Krishna, Christ, Krishna. There are evil gods in the Hindu pantheon. They represent evil, bad principles. But that's the point. The entire universe is God energy. And it's a matter of looking at different representations of it. We look up at the stars and we humanize into stories the actions between stars and the sun and moon and other planetary bodies and our relationship, Earth's relationship with them. That's where we get most mythology. Much of it is that mixed together with actual people and events. Unfortunately, this is the case with the Bible, Old Testament and New. In fact, in the New Testament, there's even more known astrotheology in it. And again, it's not my fault that that's true, or that Hinduism is tied in. And generally speaking, Hindu is not in and of itself an evil religion. There are so many countless gods and goddesses. You're just writing all of this off as wrong and evil? Can you tell me specifically what you know about it? And each of these countless gods and goddesses that permitted you to arrive at that conclusion, that it's all evil. Do you know about all the gods and goddesses? Have you read all the Vedas? Have you read the Bhagavad Gita? Have you read the other holy books? Yes, holy books. Again, you are absolutely incorrect if you're throwing a blanket statement over all of Hinduism, calling it evil. That is just, in fact, incorrect.
We don't just interact with the demon gods.
Okay, when you say we interact with the demon gods, who's we? Because I'm not a part of that. And most pagans and occultists and witches, I should have mentioned witches specifically earlier, do not want anything to do with demons or demon gods. This is you talking about it. What is your interaction with demon gods all about? You brought this up, so tell me, who is we, and what do you do with them?
We interact with the spiritual playing field that the demon gods have worked night and day trying to create. And this playing field gets attached and yoked onto our consciousness and becomes a part of the lens that we see reality through.
Wow, so demons have created the lens through which you see reality. That's very specific. I wish you all the best. I do. I'm doing it right now. I wish you all the best. I hope you can pull yourself out of this. Is this the vortex you were talking about? It may be easier than you think. I mean, stop giving such things so much time and energy. Actually, I don't know how much time and energy you do give it, but don't give it any at all. Like this whole thing with the devil and demons, the only time I give that energy and time is moments like now, where I'm actively deflecting it. That's why I started this video. Get rid of it. You called it a playing ground? Stop playing. Walk off the court.
And occult objects and divination tools, they are the bridge between these false spiritual playing fields created by principalities and the natural world.
Okay, what you just said would be true. With an edit. Take out the word false and playing field and references to everything demonic. Also, okay, heavy edits. I should say I agree with the basic idea of what you're saying, except that you're calling it false and a playing ground. I'm not playing. Okay, divination and spiritual living should be fun and somewhat whimsical, while also being sacred and sincere, absolutely. But some mix of both. The way you mean playing field is, I have to reject that too. I'm not playing. I don't want to play a game with any of these demons. I would probably need a little more clarification, but I would hope you would be specific on that. I would agree, though, in some vague way, I think there's a kernel of truth you've latched onto here, though, that divination and occult tools are a bridge between us and the beyond. If I can simplify, or perhaps that would be seen as oversimplifying. I suppose we could edit that too to say a bridge between the supernatural world and the natural world. This reality we know of and deal with day after day and live through. And that just beyond it. Let's keep it simple like that, so that for the sake of agreement, of finding at least one point of common ground here.
It's how they infiltrate and advance their kingdom here. It's through these objects.
Okay, and now you just threw it all away. Infiltrate and advance their kingdom here. Again, I don't have anything to do with that, and most people I know and know of actively not only have nothing to do with that, but actively stay away from it. You know, when we're asked questions by Christians, or at least people who, or Muslims, or Catholics, or Jews, or even atheists, anybody who's not an occultist, a pagan, or witch, when we're asked about what we do, who we are, what we look to achieve, answers are going to vary. But what most of us have in common is the point I'm repeatedly making to you as a response to your video, that we want nothing to do with this devil or demons. That's something from your religion. And I'm renouncing it. When we're asked questions about that, we offer to explain it, as I am now, and then we're often interrupted or shut down because they say, no, that's not, you don't know what you're talking about. You're messing with things you can't possibly understand. You're dabbling in the occult. You don't really know what you're doing. I do. I'm with the kingdom of God, and I'm telling you what you're doing and what you don't see. That is the ultimate presumptuous condescension. Because here we are telling you who we are, what we do, and there's an assumption being made that we're hiding something still, that we're not being really truthful, that if we'd only admit it, then what? All the stuff you see in movies, like there's midnight satanic masses and sacrificing children and all the other horrible stuff that's come out of the imagination of Christians with a lot of power. This is all stuff that's a combination of things you've been given in Hollywood movies and church sermons. So the steady diet of that mixed together gives you, it's like, can't possibly have anything but a negative view, just a very broad-stroked negative view. My point being, some of us are here to explain ourselves. How many of you are willing to listen?
And so just like everyone in the New Age believes, and just like every ancient culture ever believed, these objects aren't just pieces of decor.
Not everyone in the New Age believes. And I know you're talking to me. I don't consider myself part of that. But the thing is, we're all part of the New Age. The sun has moved into Aquarius. That's a fact whether anybody wants to acknowledge it or not. I know the Bible forbids knowledge of astrology, but that also means astronomy by extension. So it's a weird thing. I know people don't want to know. They just keep the knowledge of the stars and their actions and our relation to it away from. Those people should you want to burn books? Burn all your books related to mythology, because the story of the stars goes out. My point here is that the sun is in Aquarius, just as, oh boy, a lot of people aren't going to want to know this. When Christ was born, the sun moved into Pisces, this fisher of men. And it happened between 7 BC and, I guess you could say, year 0. The sun moved into Pisces. Thus was born this. Again, a lot of people aren't going to like it when I call it a myth. I believe there was truly a man called Yeshua ben Yusuf. Of course, there are many different theories about him, but I think he had hoisted upon him all of the relevant mythological characteristics that came with the sun being in Pisces. That happened whether you want to know it or not. He had a lot to do with the sea and fish in different respects. Now we've moved on to Aquarius. So whether somebody wants to call themselves New Age or not, it hardly matters, because we're all here.
And so just like everyone in the New Age believes, and just like every ancient culture ever believed, these objects aren't just pieces of decor.
Okay, not every culture ever believed that occult and divination objects are just pieces of decor. If they believed that they were just pieces of decor, then they wouldn't be occult and divination objects, would they? Please think about what you're saying. I'm curious what happened in your life with these things, or with one of these things, or a few maybe, I don't know, that caused you to want to throw such a blanket statement over all this kind of thing for everybody, everywhere. There are objects and places that contain negative energy. But if you found that to be true with, let's say, I'm assuming you may get into stones, a piece of quartz crystal, which I will get into later, and you've had a bad experience with that because it held some negative energy for you or someone you know, then that means all crystals are evil. Then you have to look at the question, why is there so much of it? Are crystals put in the earth in such quantities to test your faith? Because that's what it would amount to, wouldn't it? No, I'm going to wait to make a further point, again, till the end of the video. But no, you don't get to just say that that everybody of all cultures, previous to Christianity, believes that these are just pieces of decor. That's a weird statement.
They contain intrinsic spiritual properties.
They do contain intrinsic spiritual properties. That's the point of looking at the images, knowing the symbolism that those images contain, and studying the relationships with each other. That is occult investigation. Now let's see how you're going to finish this thought.
And they are owned and overseen by demonic authorities.
Okay, no, they are not owned and overseen by demonic authorities. What do you mean authorities? You and I have never met. And you're putting a lot of presumptions over on me. You are wrong, sir. You are absolutely incorrect about that.
And so the question we should be asking ourselves is, what is a Shiva idol connected to in the spirit?
What is a Shiva idol connected to? I question your use of the term idol. Because if you remember what I said earlier about any representation of Jesus, the same point can be made. How about if we ask about Shiva, the figure, just Shiva, not a Shiva idol?
What is a book like The Journey of Souls connected to in the spirit realm? What spiritual ties are there between this book and the spiritual powers that the Bible talks about in the book of Ephesians? The Bible says we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places.
Wrestle against the rulers and authorities and cosmic powers. Well, is not Jehovah one of those? Because do not forget, he turns to someone in Genesis and speaks to them as an equal, as a peer, when he says, behold, they have become as we are. My question is, who are we? So this is correct in the sense that, yes, we do wrestle against rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers. But please be aware of human error in telling other people which authorities are good and evil. Rather, why would you not tell them to investigate for themselves? That's what I say. Investigate for yourself. Do not ever stop asking questions. And yes, wrestle against rulers and authorities and cosmic powers, especially self-appointed authorities.
And so these objects, what they're really meant to do is yoke your consciousness to a false spiritual delusion.
This is tough. I don't know if I will ever be pausing a video quite as often as I am having to do here. No, that's not their purpose. The tarot is a study guide that incorporates so many different things together. And I'm not going to explain that here because I do that often in different videos, and so do many others. And if you care to do any sincere research, I mean being sincere with yourself, anybody, you can find out all of that for yourself. There is no yoking of consciousness. There is no reining it in and handing that to demonic forces. Oh, you got me here. I've reined it in for you, but here, I give you control. But I'm half unaware that you've done that to me. Oh no, now evil has me. What a weird thought. It's not true. I'll leave it at that.
Energize you in this delusion.
Again, with the presumption of delusion. No, sir.
And because demons have legal ground, legal right to these objects in the spirit, what it does is it gives demons legal right to oppress you.
Legal right to oppress you. No, it does not. Can I be any clearer? How did you arrive at this conclusion? I'd like to know, how did you arrive at this conclusion? These are very specific things, and all of them are not true. If they are for you in your experience, I would be very curious to hear about it.
To weigh on your spirit, your consciousness, your soul, an atmosphere in your house.
Again, with your soul. I don't have soul. Sir, I am soul, and you are too. We all are. We're just a little more than that also at the moment.
And it can have just brutal effects on your spiritual health.
I'm going to very, very broadly and vaguely agree with you that certain things, although you didn't say certain things, those are my words, certain things can have a negative effect on your spiritual health, and that you should be cautious and careful. But you should also feel natural and good. You know that feeling you get, the gut feeling, when somebody's lying to you, when somebody's being intentionally dishonest, disingenuous, and you know it, by a combination of nothing more than a feeling and a look in that person's eyes. In that same way, you can know the totality of your spiritual experiences, because it is in fact all about your intention, your goal, your will. What do you want? How do you go about attempting to get it, or in fact getting it? And how do you view the world spiritually, day in and day out? Because that's all that matters. If some dark force, this is crucial, if some dark force, not mysterious or as yet misunderstood, but known to be dark force, again, be honest with yourself in identifying that. Don't just call it out. It's not of Jesus, therefore it's evil, kind of a thing. And this is going about hiding from you, trying to trick you. Well, when you see it, well, it's already dead. Its purpose, because you know enough, you're already spiritually strong enough to have a force field up without even having to think about it. I remember when I used to work in a restaurant long time ago, there was an argument that came up about all this and different religions and which one of them is right, and do all of them have the same basic thing, that it just involves different names, and that's what's led to all the disagreements over time. And one of my friends, who's a Taoist like me and doesn't really want anything to do with any of the major religions, he summarized it like that. He just said, God, rolled his eyes and said, none of it matters. All you got to do is be cool, and you'll be all right. That sounds too simple for so many people, but it is that simple. Be good. And I don't mean just sit back and let things happen. I mean actively do good. Don't do it for the idea of a eternal heavenly reward. Do good for the sake of doing good. I think I said that in the last video.
For me, when I got saved, my house was still full of idols.
So you had idols. You had idols. What do you mean? Hindu figurines? You had some representations of Hindu gods or goddesses? Did you personally think of them as idols? Because the figures that those represent are not idols in and of themselves. So if they were to you, then I think I see what the problem was.
And I couldn't figure out why some rooms in my house just felt so dark and scary.
I get what you mean. Rooms feeling dark and scary. I've had that happen before. Not since I had my awakening, though, which, as of now, it's been almost 9 years. Not since then has that happened. I'm sorry that's happened to you. There are things you can do to bring it. One of the things I do happens to involve quartz crystals. Some other, I guess you could say, prayers. Some rituals you can perform. I do some with my wife. There are things you can do to clear dark energy. What you need to keep in mind is, what I would like for everybody watching this to keep in mind is what I should say. A suggestion. That can be anything. If that kind of energy is going to be encompassed in an object, that could be anything. Sometimes you don't know when that's going to be the case. Like you buy something in an antique store, you don't know its history. Sometimes it is space, a certain area, in or outside of a building, and you don't know why that's there, but whatever it is, whatever caused it, you can clear it. I don't care who you are or where you are in life or how uneducated you may be or unconnected to the world beyond, let's call it, as you may think you are connected to it, and you can clear it. There are many varied ways of doing that.
I didn't even want to go in there. It didn't feel like that until after I came to Christ, and then I would just look at a room in my house and I'd be like, I'm not going in there. It's because my room was full of idols and books, just like these ones, and I realized that these books are not just filled with false information, but that they are giving spiritual powers right of way into my life and into my house.
Okay, I will agree with you that some of those books I've not read, but I know the authors are full of false information. I'm looking at these books you're showing, and I'm thinking of people who all they really know about astrology are the people you see in infomercials. Those people are all phony. Or if you do a simple YouTube search, astrology or astrologer, most of what you're going to see are people who are full of it. And you can almost tell, again, by gut feeling and the look in their eyes, just what they're doing, the practically dripping with commercialism. And they're trying to take on a phony gypsy look, but they're actually just what people now would call a Karen, pretending to know more about the world beyond than they actually do. So it's the same thing with these books. These are the kind of books that are the same thing, that are taking a pure thing and bastardizing it, commercializing it, and then giving that version of it to the general public. Unfortunately, this is the kind of window to that stuff that most people take. They want the watered-down version. You shouldn't go for anything. Again, let me correct myself. Let me do a self-edit. Take back what I just said. I suggest, tell you should not. I suggest not going for the watered down anything. The more you look into these subjects, the more you'll know the difference between them too. Deepak Chopra. I'll just say that I personally do not consider him a genuine mouthpiece in general terms for all things Hindu. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, however, that one I'm seeing, that stands out. That is one of the most important pieces of literature we have. I hope anybody with the Tibetan Book of the Dead does not burn it. Please don't burn it. Don't burn any books.
Because the truth is, you can still live under the influence of an occult spirit even after being born again.
If you do burn books, you are akin to the firemen in the story Fahrenheit 451.
And one of the main ways you open yourself up to this is by keeping these demonically charged tools in your house.
Okay. No, sir. Demonically charged, you say, as you show a picture of Gaia, an Earth Mother. Her hair is the foliage, green produce of the earth. According to you and or your religion, did your God not create nature? Why is nature and forests considered to be so evil? That figure you're showing as you say that is Earth, is nature. It is the planet you live on and its natural produce. That's not demonically charged. If this is demonically charged, then you might want to consider somehow not walking on this planet anymore, or living here, or eating the food that it produces. That would have to mean fruits and vegetables are evil energy and you're consuming that. The silver chalice with the pentagram. Look into the true origins of the pentagram, the pentacle, a star within a circle, a five-pointed star. It's all to do with Venus. A lot of people were not aware of the Venus transit, the 8-year cycle. It traces a five-pointed star in a period of 8 years. That's the origin of that. That's probably much more simple than most people want to hear. They think, no, it's a symbol of evil. How so? Where exactly do you get that, other than what you've been told by the church or in Hollywood movies? Where does that actually come from? Does the Bible say the pentacle or the pentagram? By that name, a star encircled, representing the pattern of Venus, is evil. No, so this is just a presumption. Neither the planet Venus nor its orbit is evil. And I'm seeing what appears to be a wood carving of either a Germanic or a Norse goddess. She's holding her very pregnant belly. Oh boy. I would hope this stuff speaks for itself. So I don't know which goddess it is, but I see the moon on her head, and that she's a smiling, soon-to-be mother. Sorry, but that's not evil. In fact, I'd like to also have an explanation on how each of the things we're looking at in this image are evil. Where do you get that? Please don't be vague. How exactly are these things each evil? Life and abundance and nature, and a growing baby in a mother's belly.
This may result in some of the following symptoms: an unsound mind.
Are you kidding me? It may result in an unsound mind. That's the largest leap of faith you've made yet. Anything may result in an unsound mind. Are you kidding? At least I could show my work and how an unsound mind could come from drugs or drinking, rather than simply owning a figure that represents nature. And oh no, oh God forbid, a feminine expression of spirituality. Oh, how evil.
A double mind, a cloudy head.
A double mind, a cloudy head. What do you mean by a double mind? Really, what do you mean by that?
Feeling of disorientation or vertigo.
A feeling of disorientation. Well, I could make a really long video on the possibilities of what you could mean with that. But why bother when I can simply ask you again, please explain. Please.
A heaviness or a haziness in certain rooms in your house.
Ironically, I've had that feeling being in church.
A spiritual urge or addictive pull to go back into the occult.
Now, what's wrong with a spiritual urge in and of itself? And why are you showing the words bondage of sin as you say that? Is there a sexual implication to that? I mean, only or specifically? Spiritual urge. I need some context here with each of these statements.
A weakness in the Holy Spirit, like you feel like you don't have an open heaven over your head. You can't connect with God properly.
But it's the opposite. This sounds very specific. I mean, I'd like to know your personal story. That you couldn't connect with God properly because you had these items? Is that where you had this feeling?
It can also result in nightmares, spiritual attacks.
Again, anything can result in that. Thinking too much about the devil can do that because the devil is always in your brain. Why is he there? Because you're constantly thinking about him from reading this book and being told he exists and looking for him everywhere and putting him there and then saying, look, there he is. Stop it. Just stop it.
Straight up demonic manifestations in your house. And last but not least, poor spiritual discernment.
Poor spiritual discernment. Okay, this sounds really intriguing.
It's hard to have our discernment fully possessed by the Holy Spirit if we are under oppression from occultic spirits.
It's hard to have it if under oppression from occult experience. It's hard to have it when you grow up with the oppression of a major religion being taught to you while they shun and keep you ignorant of all else. That's what's hard. If you so believe in the absolute certainty of your religion and your religion alone, would you be okay with other religions and spiritual religions being taught in school alongside that one, so that if the light of yours should stand alone and speaks for itself, let it outshine those others. I don't believe in ignorance, keeping anyone ignorant of anything except in terms of parenting. That would not include religion. Yes, some things you're going to increment as they get older. But religion, to let them get by, finally reach a certain age and say, okay, all right, it's time you know. Santa Claus is not real. But this particular God and everybody associated with it in this book, that's not fantasy. Keep that alive. That's real. Fairies and all that other stuff, it's not only wrong, it's evil. It's not only untrue, but it's evil. Well, if it's untrue, then how could it be evil? You see the dilemma we're looking at here.
And right now we're going to go through a list of things that should be burnt. And I recommend burning them because that's what they did in the book of Acts. We'll take a look at that in a little bit.
Okay. Before we even name things, I'm just going to say, no, don't burn anything. Unless it's maybe a candle or a cigarette. Or a log in the fire.
Right now we're going to go through a list of some objects that will give these principalities legal ground into your life and into your consciousness and into your house. So the first thing is books. Occult books, New Age books, Gnostic books, esoteric books, Transcendentalist books, Hindu books, Buddhist books.
Oh boy. So he is a book burner, and he is suggesting book burning. People, please do not. It's one of the biggest issues I have. This is why we have so much spiritual ignorance. We had this religion book burning since its inception. Look at what they did, both Christians and Muslims, at the Library of Alexandria. Just remember that while you burn books, would you? Think about what you're depriving the future of. Even if you know ahead of time that those people are going to be Christians who look down on all these things, at least you allowed them to have the information so that they can be prepared, right, of what you call evil. Don't burn books. Let me see some of these, if I can read some of these books you're showing us. The first one I see is Genesis. It is not misspelled, Genesis. That is a rare book written in 1985. I have a copy. About geometry, literal measurement on the earth that the author discovered in France, not just in Paris, but I won't go into it any more than that. It is vital information. And it is an ever-rarefying book. I'm wondering, in fact, where this photo was taken, if you took it or if you got it off the internet, because I'm wondering, where is that just for sale like that? I had to order a copy of it, and it was hard to find. The Religions of the Oppressed. How interesting. Surely that's not about Islam or Christianity or Catholicism or Judaism. So you want to burn even knowledge about these other cultures who are already having their history wiped out for them in the form of books and their ancestors. Carlos Castaneda, almost that entire bottom row. Interesting guy, interesting stories. I'm not going to tell anybody one way or the other than, like everything else, don't burn it. Okay, I'm seeing up here, English fairy tales. Don't burn any mythology books. Any mythology books, please. Fairy tales, come on. Children's stories. When mythology uses the term fairy tales, that's generally applied to, they're rewritten in a way that will appeal to children. You want that gone? Antiquities of Egypt. So things, literal objects found in Egypt. You want a book burned that tells us about things that were found in Egypt. A big book, a guide to the antiquities of Egypt. I can't see the author's name. So we're just going into general history books too? This is horrible, what you're suggesting.
Occult books, New Age books, Gnostic books, esoteric books, Transcendentalist books, Hindu books, Buddhist books.
Wow, that's a lot of information you want to disappear. See, the problem here is the same problem that would exist in a society who demands censorship, which unfortunately we're kind of looking at now. Sooner or later, Somebody's going to have to be voted into power, either somebody or a group of people who have to determine what is to be burned or thrown away, what is to contribute to our future ignorance. That's what you're asking for. So, the question will inevitably arise. There's going to be a gray area with some of this. How do the people you would elect, since that would have to be the case, somebody's going to have to do it. Some of those people are going to have a problem being able to tell, is this one evil? Should this one be burned, or should not? It kind of touches on the subject. How do you know? And what if you made a mistake afterward and then they acknowledge it? Are you going to Stalinize that mistake and say, no, we never burned that? Yesterday we said we did. We were proud of it. But today we don't want anybody to know. I say Stalinize. That's my favorite term for it, because Joseph Stalin used to literally, just like what happened in the book 1984 by George Orwell, change history. They would proclaim history to be a certain thing with this certain political flavor to it. Then the very next day they would change their mind. Something else would happen, and they would say, no, 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 that thing we did yesterday, update it. Not only did that first thing never happen, but we never changed it yesterday. Update the history books to say so. This is the kind of thing that what you're asking for amounts to.
Yoga books.
Yoga. Here we go again.
Yoga books.
Okay. The word yoga, the word itself, means to unite. Unite with what? The implication is to unite with the entire universe. That's not just talk. That's everything that exists other than yourself. What you're essentially saying is that everything other than you should be done away with, because that's what yoga is. To unite with everything else. Think about what you're saying. Now I'm saying nothing but Aleister Crowley books. I am not a fan of the man himself, the way he lived his life, but he was a genius author. And it was because of him that a lot of crucial information came our way. And I'm going to leave it at that. Besides, I'll add this. Crowley himself would be smirking with delight, possibly bending over gut-holding laughter if he were to find out that his books were being burned by you or anyone who took your suggestion. The fact that you would give fire to what he's written, that would probably amuse Crowley.
Any books that advocate reincarnation, crystals, aliens.
Books that advocate crystals, aliens. So we should burn books about crystals. I hope you don't suggest later in the video that we somehow burn crystals. Do you know what crystals are? I mean, what they do, and how many of them there are in our planet, in our home. They hold light as information. When you think of light as information, you're thinking the way Nikola Tesla did. And if you want quartz crystals and books about them to disappear and to become part of this suggested ignorance that we go into, then you'd better throw away your computer too, because the computer you use to make that video I'm commenting on operates on the principle of silicon crystals. Why? Because They contain and deal with and work with energy, electricity, light as information. So in order to tell us to throw away crystals and information about them, you are using crystals to convey that to us. I hope you see the problem there.
Universalism, pantheism, the use of drugs, spiritism, sorcery, magic, mysticism, channeling, quote-unquote, spiritual awakening.
Quote-unquote. How about if we take the quotes away and we're talking about actual spiritual awakening? As I did earlier in this video. Take the quotes away. Unless you're just quoting me and saying so. But that's the only thing here you put quotes around.
Any false version of Jesus, Atlantis, theosophy, etc.
Theosophy? Oh boy. Look, with everything you're suggesting, the only thing left would be the Bible, wouldn't it? Or books about the Bible. Is that where we're supposed to arrive at the end of all this? Because you're naming a lot of stuff. You're leaving this very open-ended.
I would also recommend including fiction books in here that contain these themes in them.
There's a lot of creativity, a lot of art that we would have to throw out. Most of it, in fact. Probably all of it. Why would you want that? How would we be better for it? Please imagine a world without most art. Written works, music, in every form you can think of. Imagine that. How bereft of life itself we would be.
It says in Galatians 5:20 that idolatry and sorcery are works of the flesh, and that those who practice these things will not enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, sorcery is distinct from magic. Idolatry, most pagans, well, you're going to hear a lot of different views about that. That's only part of the reason why you should not throw a blanket statement out about it. I have nothing to do with idolatry. You seem to be assuming that anybody who's not a Christian is an idolater. And I think you owe everybody who you direct that to an explanation, because you don't know their particular situation. In the kind of world you're suggesting we live in, nobody has anything to learn from each other. Nobody has any stories to tell, because it's all in the Bible. That's all that's left.
It further says in Revelation 21:8 that those who practice these things will have their place in the lake of fire.
The lake of fire. I'm sorry that an evil God who tells me that I should die thinks that that will happen, this lake of fire. But according to at least current versions we have of the Bible, suffer not a witch to live. Surely you don't need to be reminded of that. This God does not want me to be alive. That means I cannot possibly ascribe the miracle of life to such an evil being. So I should be careful of these things, or else I'll end up spiritually in a lake of fire, says the God who wants you to kill me.
Or we could look in Deuteronomy 18, verse 12, where it says, whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord.
That's right. I'm an abomination also. We're abominations. In fact, how ironic. He's calling inadvertently himself an abomination. He who burns his son or his daughter as an offering. Well, does it matter who it's offered to? Because Jehovah, you remember what happened with Isaac? He was asking for a blood offering to himself. Yeah, he stopped him at the last second. But think about the sadism involved in that. And what he caused to happen in the mind and heart of the man he demanded it from. Is that love? Is it really? I say that's the same demanding someone slit their son's throat, even if you take it back at the last second. The same as burning them. I can also tell you, nobody's doing that. If anybody's burning their son or daughter, it's one of these weird crimes you're going to see on cops now and then. I understand they do that in certain parts of the Middle East too, but come on, are you kidding me? Anyone who burns his son or... And I know this was written, we're talking about Old Testament, right? Did they forget this part when the supposed witches were being burned alive? Not all that long ago? Were we supposed to forget about this verse? It's okay when they do it? I guess the same God did say, do not suffer a witch to live. So not only was it right to kill her, even if she wasn't actually a witch, but to burn her, to watch her suffer. This is disgusting what you're proposing.
So God does not want us involved in these practices. These practices are worthy of hellfire.
Okay, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes. We went through this in the last video too. It's the same thing as prophecy. So several beloved characters of the so-called good book are guilty of the same thing. It's just a different word for it. Prophecy and divination. Same thing. I doubt they had a pack of cards with them. Does the means of doing so matter when you're still doing it?
Precisely because it is communion with demons, as it says elsewhere in Scripture.
It's not communion with demons. This God is either lying or he is ignorant, or the men who claim to speak for him when compiling and editing the Bible in its original form are lying and being absolutely, well, full of it. And I can tell you it was at least the latter, at least.
And there are far better forms of entertainment out there.
Far better forms of entertainment. So your movie criticism is supposed to just override everything. Far better.
That don't glorify the Satanic Kingdom.
That do not glorify the Satanic Kingdom. Okay, again, tell me more about the Satanic Kingdom. Because as your story, I'm curious. I have nothing to do with that, and neither do most occultists and pagans and witches and astrologer. That's a fact. We're not being deceived and, oh, if only I could just see what's really happening. That's the stuff we need to stop. I'm willing to tell you all about the world I live in, the things I do. It's just a matter of, do you want to know or do you not? This devil stuff has nothing to do with it.
You're going to want to get rid of card decks, tarot cards, angel decks.
I'm not going to want to get rid of them. I collect them. I use regularly a few of them. A few more of them I use sometimes, but wow, how many do I have by now? 45, maybe 50 decks. I have some of them very rare. But no, I do not want to get rid of them. I want to keep collecting.
Ascended Master decks.
You got to remember, it's not just about the object. It's about your intention. What do you think this thing is? I'm holding an empty hand up to you, but I'm talking about a tarot deck as if it were here. What is that to you? Okay, well, that's not what it is to me or to most people who actually use it. And by the way, I see you're showing Doreen Virtue, Angel's Oracle. She has since denounced tarot, and she's come over to, I'll just say, your religion. So it's inappropriate that that's here.
Fairy and elf decks, fortune-telling decks, magic card decks, anything like this.
Also, if anybody thinks of tarot as being purely fortune-telling, and that it's not so much more than that. is already on the wrong foot in understanding what it really is, what it really encompasses. The study of what it is and what it represents will never stop. Just like the story of the stars. It goes on and on.
You're going to want to get rid of idols and statues.
Buddha and Hindu, no. These are the very things that have brought me peace and comfort and truth.
Buddha statues, Hindu idols, dragons, fairy, elves, pagan gods, Greek mythology statues.
Greek mythologies. You specified Greek. Are the Norse ones not? Are you implying that those, as in all of a certain culture other than Greek, are not?
There's a reason why idol worship is equated with demon worship in Revelation 9:20 and Deuteronomy 32:17.
Okay, see, there's another thing you just kind of slipped in there and expected us to take for granted. Idol worship. Are you assuming that anybody who has such a thing worships that thing? Because if that's what you're doing, then please also assume that anybody that has a figurine of Jesus or Mary or a nativity scene worships that thing. My point is, you're not worshiping the thing, the stuff it's made out of. It's what that thing represents. Even then, it's not always worship we're talking about. Not all religions and spiritual traditions deal with worship. Me personally, I can make the point that that's true. Worship is not involved at all. There is a reverence, particularly for the goddess by many names, the universe in many feminine representations. And there's a reason for that I do that, which, come to think, I may make a video about why that is so.
And it's because of what these idols are representing in the spirit and what they're linked to in the spirit.
And I see that Revelation quote specifies worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood. What if they're made of other materials? Is that okay? And also specified is the fact that they cannot see or hear or walk. Well, how do we know that Jehovah does? How do you know? Most people will say, well, I just know, or the Bible says so. I will leave that alone. So, they sacrificed to demons that were no gods, to gods they had never known, to new gods that had come recently, whom your fathers had never dreaded. Well, is the implication that they should be worshipped if they are dreaded? Because we know that's what you're all about. We're told that fear of God is a good thing somehow. We should be scared of the same person who supposedly loves us and we should love. That is the most contrived thing to me, this equation of fear and love. And Leviticus, quote from 17, so they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons after whom they whore. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations. Okay. Goat demons. I don't know what all this demonology is about. But they're referring the goat. They're referring to the age of Aries. We had the age of Taurus in the Bible. When the sun was in Taurus, we had the age of Aries, we had the age of Pisces. This is what it's about. It's an acknowledgement. Yes, some people now, just as then, misunderstood this. And they literally worshipped a bull or a representation of a bull. But that's where it came from. Same thing with the goat or ram. That's the sign of Aries. This stuff about being a whore, that's contrived just because the Bible and most people alive at that time needed women to look like garbage and so much less than men.
It's not because God's a bigot, it's because he knows what's going on.
It is because God's a bigot. It is. He tells us one thing about himself and then does another.
The next thing you're going to want to get rid of is crystals.
And there we are. Get rid of crystals. Get rid of the storage of information.
Crystal balls, crystal wands, crystal jewelry, crystal stones, anything that's been used for divination, spiritism, and witchcraft. I'll do a whole video on crystals another time, but there's a reason why they're in every single metaphysical shop. So just chuck them.
Yes, you're correct, sir. There is a reason why they are in every metaphysical shop. There is a reason.
You're going to want to get rid of clothing items with pagan symbols.
I'm not going to want to get rid of clothing items with pagan symbols. No, I'm not going to want that.
Anything with all-seeing eyes or the flower of life.
The all-seeing eye. So are you going to go with that one too, that that's evil? Please explain how so. You know what that is? Have you ever seen a representation of the pineal gland that we all have? Look up the Eye of Horus that you see in common Egyptian art. Compare that image to the image of the pineal gland as seen from the side of the human head. That's what it represents. A piece of our brains that we all have when it's awakened. That's what's known as the spiritual eye. It's a kind of seeing that these eyes do not do. To see, to know, either of these in the broadest sense, is not evil, no matter how many times you're told it is.
Anything with a witchcraft symbol on it or an esoteric symbol.
There is the Eye of Horus right there. Do you even know?
You're going to want to get rid of CDs, like meditation music, chanting.
Chanting and CDs. Are you kidding me? I'm anxious to see, well, maybe anxious is the wrong word, even sarcastically, of what is left in the world after the people you're rousing to action have burned it all away, burned or thrown away. What's left?
Any music with occult, satanic, or esoteric themes?
Well, for the record, I don't want anything to do with anything satanic either. That's a figure that's of your religion. I want nothing to do with him. Again, the purpose of this whole series of videos is to reject and deflect the projection of the devil.
You're going to want to get rid of tapestries, jewelry, posters.
I'm not going to want to get rid of these things. I'm not a big fan of those giant tapestries, but jewelry... No. That's good stuff.
Movies and DVDs.
Movies and DVDs. Again, do we need to bring back into play the people who get to decide what needs to be thrown away and burned? Because there are going to be disagreements.
Trinkets, masks, dream catchers.
Dream catchers. Look, I love dream catchers. I love them. I have a fundamental disagreement with their existence because I happen to be a fan, I guess you could say, in a manner of speaking, of having bad dreams. I want to have nightmares and bad dreams to face those things. We're being told significant things about ourselves and the world we live in when we have those dreams. We're challenged. It doesn't feel good to be met up against things we don't want to see, but we need to face them. We need to meet these challenges. We need to see them. I don't want to even symbolically stop that from happening.
Incense, sage, pendants, anything like this. These things all play a role in opening up your spirit to being yoked, to being spiritually oppressed and energized in a delusion about who you are, about who God is, and about how spirituality works.
This is so weird to me, how you assume that all pure spiritual experience that has nothing to do with your religion is just a delusion. This is one of the most condescending and presumptuous things I have ever heard. Wow. I would like for you to hear again your own statement. Let's listen to it again.
These things all play a role in opening up your spirit to being yoked, to being spiritually oppressed and energized in a delusion about who you are, about who God is, and about how spirituality works. They create ties between your consciousness and the principalities that have been set over these practices and over these worldviews, which makes it harder for you to see the truth because it's like having an extra set of blinders over your eyes.
Makes it harder for me to see the truth because it's like having an extra set of blinders over my eyes. An extra set of blinders. What's the first that you're presuming I have because I don't see the world the way you do? Apparently the only right way. Tell me about these blinders that I have and that so many other people you've never met have.
There's a really interesting scripture in Acts 19, verse 19, where it reads, "A number of those who had practiced magic arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all, and they counted the value of them and found it came to 50,000 pieces of silver." So this is about $10,000 worth of magic books, and they got rid of them permanently. They didn't donate them to other sorcerers. They didn't try to sell them and make a profit. We don't want to be recycling them back into the Satanic Kingdom to be used by other people to pervert other people's spirituality. We want to get rid of them permanently and just rid them off the face of the planet if we can by burning them.
This is hard to take, that you're smiling while saying all this. I wondered if you would get to that quote from Acts 19. That in itself is evil. There, I'm on record as saying it.
And you will have so much more peace and freedom and wholeness and clarity of mind when you rid your life from these objects.
I have all those things as it is because I left the religion, and I can see how it's being used to control people and how it always has been. Even if there are some core truths to it, and there are, that's also the case with most religions. I have all of the things you're claiming are wrong or evil or need to be done away with. Spiritual peace, comfort, all the things you just named, because I stepped away from religion.
Thanks for watching. I hope this has been helpful to you in some way.
When I rid my life from these objects, you're investing a lot of presumed power in objects in and of themselves. Again, I would like to know your personal story. Perhaps I should check out your channel. Maybe you have another video somewhere that explains what happened to you, that makes you look at all objects everywhere in the world. For everybody else, the same things that happened to you must have happened to everybody else, even though they haven't.
And I'll see you guys in the next video.
And I see we end on a quote from 1 Timothy that says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons." Interesting. This religion came out of the others specified. Okay. If you're thinking of somebody specific, I'd like to know who they are too, because are you presuming that I, as a non-Christian, have devoted myself to a deceitful spirit? Because what a horrible thing to say. Presumptions, especially when going hand in hand with such proud condescension, is itself an evil thing, and it can only truly ultimately damage the person doing it in ways that I'll never know about unless you've made a video about that too. Okay, and the final quote here is from 2 Corinthians. "And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." That is one to think about, isn't it? See, this God of the Bible is quite a deceiver if we're to believe what we're told about him by the men who wrote it, who wrote about him. Because he says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." And yet, In the Ten Commandments, he says, "Thou shalt not kill." So, which is it? Okay, so maybe I should end on a Bible quote of my own. Deuteronomy 13 says to put to death anyone, including family, who entices you away from the Lord thy God. And for anyone out there thinking, yeah, but that's the Old Testament. It says the same thing in 2 Chronicles. Don't shoot the messenger. Or maybe you should. Your God wants me to die. Regarding occult objects in general, I'd like to make the point here, the type of occult objects that he was just discussing. You see Sarasvati behind me. One of the most beloved things I own. I encourage everybody to look up Sarasvati, Saraswati, and what she represents and who she is. This is a figure from, yes, Hindu cosmology, the Hindu pantheon that was a part of my awakening, without quotations, actual spiritual awakening. Simplified version is goddess of wisdom and music. Nothing's being hidden when you say goddess of wisdom and music. That's not a veneer. Nobody's twirling their mustache behind that statement going, ha ha ha, they believed it. That's the case. So, that is an occult object. I want you to take note of something too. I could show you some other ritual items I have. In addition to the kinds of things that were just shown to you, you know what? I will. Quartz crystal, you see the light shining in it? That's information being stored. I wanted to show you an example. A paintbrush. You begin with an idea, something that occurred in your imagination. You drew forth from nothing something and actualized it. That makes this an occult object. Should I throw it away and regard it as evil? Is the devil deceiving me because I used it, or my wife did? A pencil. Same principle. It's an occult object. You use this side to draw forth, make something from nothing. The other end, the eraser. You can take it away again. You can turn the something you drew forth and bring it back to nothing, an apparent nothing. Either way, you have performed an occult action. I encourage everyone to bring forth rather than to take away, particularly in the form of book burning. Just some final words to leave you with. I appreciate everybody who joined me, and I will see you next time. Blessed be.